Hey there. When you're practicing downward dog, do you ever wonder if you're doing it right? Hi, my name is Seth Dellinger. I'm the creator of the Reimagining Asana program. And this is a bit of a unique program in the yoga world because, in fact, getting it right is not the starting point. Instead, in this program, you use the yoga postures as a means to investigate the personal patterns of movement within your own body, your own historical patterns, and you learn to find your way into the postures by way of exploration from many, many different angles. So what I want to offer you today in this video is just a simple way of looking at the question of symmetry and asymmetry in downward dog. And if you think about downward dog, it's essentially a symmetrical shape. But you know that you have a dominance on one side of the body. You may have an injury that happened at some point on one side of the body. You may be engaged in activities throughout the day that make you move more to one side than the other. And so these kinds of things show up in the posture. So what you're going to do here is just a simple investigation of the process of pushing up and back into downward dog. But rather than being worried about getting into the posture and doing the posture right, you're simply going to investigate what shows up in terms of what's happening in your body. And then you're going to play with it a little bit, and you might be really surprised at what shifts in your experience of downward dog. So I hope you enjoy this, and if you do, go ahead and like, subscribe, leave a comment. There's going to be more of these videos, so love to hear what you think about it. All right, let's give it a try. Come onto your hands and knees. And just one time, tuck your toes under and lift yourself up and back into your downward dog. And just feel, how is your downward dog today? You can bend one knee, bend the other knee. You can look a little bit around the room in the position. But just notice what's going on in your body right now. You're not trying to do the best downward dog you've ever done, but you're here to try to learn something about your own particular way of doing the posture so that maybe you can uncover a detail you hadn't noticed before. So once you have a little sense of what's going on in your body right now, maybe there's a particular sensation in one hip joint or in one of your ankles or somewhere in your spine, then just go ahead and come back down onto your hands and knees. And now what you're going to do is you're going to investigate this movement of lifting up and back. But the way you're going to do it is you're just going to investigate the very, very, very beginning of the movement. You're not going to lift all the way back up into downward dog again. So tuck your toes under again and think about the entire action. Think about your hips coming all the way back and up. Think about the complete movement. But instead of doing the whole movement, just lift your knees off the floor and put them down. That's it. But you're going to repeat this movement many times. Now don't repeat it like an exercise. Do the movement very slowly so that you can pay attention to the details of what's happening. Try to notice which knee lifts off the floor first. And if you notice that one knee is lifting first, please don't try to correct it. Just lower the knees again. And then once again, very slowly, begin the movement as if to go up and back into downward dog, but you're only just bringing the knees away from the floor. And doing this movement very slowly will actually highlight a number of things. So also notice as you begin to lift, if one knee is lifting more, you're probably engaging one foot into the floor more than the other. And also notice what you're doing with your arms. Do you feel the engagement in one shoulder more than the other? Again, this is just in the very, very first moment of the movement of lifting up and back. Does your pelvis move directly backwards? Or if it's one knee lifting before the other, is there a very slight sideways movement of the pelvis that you can notice? And for your head, same thing. Does your head stay right in the middle between your hands, or does it seem to shift a little bit in the direction of one hand as you begin to lift the knees off the floor? So pause now. You can come off your hands if you like. You can rest in any position. Just take a moment. And then when you're ready, come back onto hands and knees. Now, this time, whichever knee you noticed was lifting first, do that deliberately. So you're going to do a movement that's nearly the same as what you were just doing, except you're going to exaggerate it a little bit. So you're no longer even thinking that you'd like both knees to lift together. You lift one knee before the other so that you can exaggerate this particular pattern that you have. And lift the one knee first and lower. The second knee can begin to come off the floor as well, but lead with the one knee. And again, just notice how that bias plays out throughout the rest of your body. What happens in the spine? Where do your eyes end up looking towards? And get an overall sense of how much effort is involved in doing this. Again, you're only really lifting the knee maybe an inch from the floor. So come down, pause, and then the next time you go to make the movement, you're going to lift the other knee. You're going to create the other kind of a bias. And what you're doing here now, you're not just going over to the other side. You are practicing an asymmetry that is the opposite of your habitual asymmetry. So even though you can certainly do this, just notice if it feels a little bit funny, if it doesn't feel quite as smooth as lifting the other knee first. And just do the movement enough times so you really notice how this plays out through your legs, through your hip joints, your spine. How do you engage with each arm? Now pause again. And you can be resting throughout this process whenever you wish, because if you over effort, it makes it harder to notice these little details. What you're after here is to pick up information. So you want to be sensitive to what you're doing. So resting when you need to is important. But now come back and just begin to lift one knee off the floor, and then come back down, and then lift the other knee and come back down. But you're making the movement as if you were going to go up into downward dog. So you can almost imagine if you were to think of going up into downward dog, but the left knee comes off the floor before the right knee. If you just followed that, where would your pelvis be if you went all the way up into downward dog? Would it be more over your right heel or more over your left heel? And if you were to lift the right knee first, where would your downward dog be going? You're still just making these small movements, but you go side to side and just notice if one side is easier. on the side where maybe it feels a little more challenging, where do you feel the strain? So if you feel the strain in one shoulder, just notice how the shoulder feels on the other side. And if you go back and forth like this, is there something you can notice about how you do it on the side that's easier for you, that you can transfer over to the side where it's not as clear? All right. Pause again. If you like, you could even briefly come all the way down and lie on your back. Again, just to briefly rest and to feel what's happening in your body at this point. You can roll your head a little side to side. And then bend your knees, stand your feet, roll to your side, come back up onto all fours. And before you lift all the way up into downward dog again, just make a few more movements of lifting the knees an inch away from the floor. But to the best of your ability, can you lift the knees exactly simultaneously? So if you go slow and small, typically, if you really pay attention, there is one knee that's probably still lifting just a fraction of a second before the other one. But if you pick up on that, can you adjust? Can you make the next movement slightly differently? Find a little bit different support in the floor, something, until it feels a little more like a simultaneous movement. And then pause again, and now go ahead, lift all the way up and back into downward dog again. But just see if this process clarified something for you. And as you stay in your downward dog, or maybe you bend one knee, bend the other, move around like you did at the beginning, just notice if something feels new. Did you discover something about your own personal patterns with downward dog through this process? I hope this was useful to you, and if you'd like to explore more with your downward dog, you might want to check out the Reimagining Asana program. You can check out the link in the caption of the video to learn more about that. All right, take care. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you enjoyed this, if you look down in the caption, you'll also see where you can get free training from me, 3 simple keys to transform your yoga practice. And see you next time. Take care.